Welcome to One EXP CultureCast, the official podcast of eXp Realty's primary diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, One EXP. I'm your host and the leader of eXp's DEI efforts, Cody Gilkeson. Here, we explore the unique stories, challenges, and triumphs of individuals who are shaping the culture of eXp Realty. Each episode, we'll connect with inspiring guests who share their personal journeys and insights, giving us a window into their experiences and the impact they're making. Together, we'll celebrate the diverse voices that make up the cultural fabric of eXp. Together, we'll learn as stories of growth and resilience take center stage. This is One EXP CultureCast, the bi-weekly podcast about what makes us us.
Hey everybody, welcome to season 3, episode 2 of the CultureCast. And I'm here to bring in Black History Month with a bang with none other than the fearless leader of the Black EXP Network, Miss Rachel Allen. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It's so cool for you to be here. It feels like a long time coming. And for anybody that doesn't know, Rachel came in at kind of a tumultuous time at Black EXP Network and took the reins and has really moved this in a new direction while staying so faithful and true to the core principles that set BEN aside in the first place. It's been beautiful to watch. It's like a miracle. I'm so happy for BEN.
Thank you. I mean, I definitely couldn't do any of this without the core people around, just the leadership team that we have, and also the support of One EXP. So I'm just glad to be here.
Yeah. You've got a heck of a team. You really do. And, it shows with you guys just winning a Resource Group of the Year at the One EXP Awards. That was huge. And that was such a tight race. We have so many great resource groups. To pull out in the lead when the category is so stacked is,
definitely an honor for sure. I was not expecting that at all.
So I want to take just a minute and sort of address an elephant in the room before we get started. Okay, so elephant in the room, this is a DEI podcast. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a lot going on in the media that is characterizing DEI as something that it's honestly not. And I am lucky enough to have seen the Grammy Awards last night and got to see Miss Alicia Keys accept her Global Impact Award and dedicate her speech to the fact that DEI programs are a gift and not a curse. And I thought that was such a beautiful speech. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But I just want to say to the folks that are listening, the folks that are watching, the folks that love CultureCast, the folks that love One EXP, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. If anything, we are maybe having to be more nimble and dexterous about how we phrase things and how we present things, but the work continues. And in my world, work continuing means we continue on the upward. Right. We're not slowing down. We're not plateauing. We're not going anywhere. One EXP is here to stay, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever in 2025. And Rachel's going to be a big part of that.
So I say more now than ever, I think it's needed because with the things that are going around and the environment around us, I think needs to be more education, more clarity on what it actually is and what we do and how it works. Because I will tell you, we do it really well here at One EXP. That's for sure.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things. I'll get off this soapbox in a second. But honestly, when you look at what people are really demonizing about DEI, those are things that are not part of our game here at EXP. Right. Our game here is about improving the lives of our agents and about improving the business of our agents and about making people feel like they've got a home here at our company. And we're never not going to do that. We might call it something else, but we're always going to be doing that. That's EXP is committed to being agent-centric, and this is an arm of that.
Yeah. It just makes sense to me.
Makes sense. Makes business sense. Yeah, great. So, Rachel, your journey in real estate started after a really deeply personal experience, and that was Hurricane Katrina. So, how did that moment shape your perspective on homeownership and community rebuilding and the real estate business in general?
Yeah. So I had just graduated college. I was 21, 22 years old, something around that time, long time ago. Katrina happened in 2005, and literally came home, unpacked my bags. A week later, had to figure out how to evacuate. And so I was just really starting to understand what life would be as an adult, naturally uprooted from a place that I lived and had to move to Houston, Texas. And I won't say had to, it felt like I had to at the time. And I fought it for quite some time. But it is now home. It's become my home. And, I think as I kind of started to find my footing in my work career at the time, it was in retail sales of a wireless phone provider. I started to understand. Oh, keep in mind, this was also around the time of the housing bubble.
Right. Yeah.
So it was 2006. I decided I was going to buy my first home. And luckily, it was really easy to get a mortgage because all you had to really do was be able to breathe, show that you were alive. Mortgage, zero down. I was like, sure, why not buy a house? I might as well do that. And so I did that. And that's when I first planted roots. But also, I was being pulled from an emotional place back to New Orleans because there was a rebuilding process that was happening, and it was taking quite some time. And my parents, who, had a home there, we had my grandmother's home as well. So we had two pieces of property there. It was like, okay, there's an opportunity. I saw an opportunity, and I missed all my friends, and I just really wanted to be back in New Orleans. So I took the time to, I made a decision actually without a plan. I was like, I'm going to quit my job here and I'm going to go find a job out there, but I'm also going to rebuild one of the properties that we had out there. And so that's how I kind of jumped into real estate, not even fully, like a couple of things. One, I had to figure out how to rebuild a house, but also because I had purchased a home in Houston, I became a landlord right during the time of the housing crash because it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I got into real estate. And one of the first things I decided to do was like, I don't really know what to do in real estate. What do I do? Let me go get my license. I got my real estate license, and I just kind of used it very sparingly just so I could get access to the MLS, and went into, understanding and learning about investing in real estate, all these terms, cash flow, equity, appreciation. I started to understand how it all worked, started reading books, and then I started to understand the power of real estate and how it truly helps people to attain wealth,
Right.
long-term wealth. And so.
Yeah, I think, and I've always thought, and, it's more than just a feeling, there's empirical data to back it up, that one of the issues with the Black wealth gap has to do with home ownership, right? It's such an intrinsic part of that. I remember I worked in retail also. I was a bank teller for many years, and I worked on the south side of Syracuse, which is, some people would call that like a scary neighborhood or whatever, but those were people, right? Those were people that were struggling, and I just wanted to give them whatever advice I could to keep their lives afloat. They wanted me to sell these people credit cards. And it's like, I'm not going to ding these people's credit. They have it hard enough. They live in the south side of Syracuse. You know what I mean? And I remember doing finances with a woman who would always bring me bundt cakes. And she was almost 90 years old. And she had started just in the middle of the night, woke up from a dream in a cold sweat and started writing down and doing the math of how much money she had spent on rent in her very, very poor apartment. I mean, her apartment, I had been over there with her before to help her bring groceries in, and it was a one room, like you would think this was New York City. I couldn't believe that she was able to function in there, and having to go up and down stairs when she uses a walker to walk in the street. I was like, what? And she added up the math, and she had paid something like $600,000 in rent.
That's crazy.
To the kind of home she could have owned in Syracuse for that money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's just what she paid on it. Like that doesn't even account for the appreciation that would have happened over time. And that's again why it's become such a big part of my personal passion and mission to educate around this topic. It's because most people in our, I won't say most people, but many people in our community don't even know or understand the concepts of, and we're just kind of, because the access to social media and the things that are everything you learn on TikTok,
Mhm.
Instagram, we're now starting to see what that looks like. But when I look at like my parents' generation, especially in New Orleans, around that time that I went back to rebuild our own property, my parents understood the value of having a home, but they
Mhm.
didn't really understand the value of acquiring multiple homes or land, which was from maybe a factor true for my family. But many of my parents' friends or their parents, it was interested in seeing um, that many acquired multiple properties. So my mom had a friend who had multiple properties that had been acquired over time. They rented them out. But what was kind of sad to see is that, as they had children, probably didn't instill the same, understanding of that with their kids. Because, and I think this is like, there's probably studies on this. It goes in cycles, right? You work so hard to acquire things and give your children just an easy life. Like, hey, I got it. Don't worry about it. But sometimes we fail to teach, like, okay, to keep this going, you have to do X, Y, Z, or this is how you do this. And so, um, oftentimes in that next generation, it falls off. You're like, I don't know what to do with this property. I now own a home, and it's worth this much, and I need the money, so let me sell it. Versus leveraging it to be able to acquire more property or keep it in the family. And so I think that's a big part of what I want to make sure that, we can instill in realtors, because that's who we are. We are gatekeepers for this kind of knowledge to show, okay, you might have a financial need. Maybe you want to do something. Maybe you want to, instead of having this, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that's worth $100,000, instead of selling it, why don't we leverage it, show you how to take money out of it to go get what you want, but you can still keep that property.
Yeah.
And
And tell me about a little bit about, so, you know, a lot of realtors get by on social media just showing listings. But that education piece of educating your community about the importance of home ownership and asset acquirement, that has got to give you, what does that give you, right? Like that feels like something that if I were doing work like that, I would put my head on the pillow at night feeling like I helped my community, which
yeah,
is so much better than a paycheck. You know what I mean?
yeah, and that's what it is. It's like, I've talked to realtors, when you help a family get into a home and they're like, thank you. You have changed my family for generations to come. Like, ooh, I kind of like, sometimes we don't realize the impact we have, especially if we're just going into it like, hey, here's a house. It's got bedrooms, it's got a pool, it's pretty nice. But if you talk to your clients about, okay, or you keep in contact with your clients, because I think that's a big part of my process is, okay, I want to make sure it's 3 years later. This is the value of your home. What does that mean? What can you do with that? Maybe you want to do some home improvement projects and you have some equity in your home. Let me tell you about, these home improvement, loan products, HELOC loans. This is what you can do to improve the value of your home and also make it more comfortable to live in. Or maybe you can leverage some of what you own in your home and go purchase an investment property.
And that's called
Kind of cool.
working smarter, not harder for those who are listening. That's creating a process of follow up 3 years
Oh
later.
yeah,
That's a brilliant tactic. Yeah.
yeah. And then they appreciate. Your clients will appreciate you for what you do, and they'll refer you to others. But I mean, that's what I really want to make sure that we know and understand in our community. Like, having a house first and foremost, it's your safe space. It's the roof over your head. It's where you feel safe. It's where you build your community. It's where you create your memories, which is great. But just because you buy one home doesn't mean it has to be your forever home. It's some of when I approach clients, they want to wait until they have enough to get their forever home. But even simply just teaching them, let's get this starter home, because this is actually going to help you build into that forever home, because of equity and appreciation.
That's brilliant. I learned so much from having all, realtors from all different backgrounds on my podcast. It teaches me so much about the things that you take for granted that you should know about your adult finances. You know what I mean?
They
And I
don't
think
teach that
that,
in school.
no, they really don't teach you
They
that
really
stuff.
need to
They
start
really don't.
teaching adulting 101, like probably around high school.
Yeah. And I think, last week we did the 1EXP Awards, and we have this one category for Educator of the Year. And as we were looking at the list, I was like, this is so much more than I thought. I was thinking, who is teaching virtual sessions for other realtors, that kind of business. But when I really look at it and break it down, every realtor is an educator,
Yeah.
right? You have to be. And it's just parsing that bit out that I never really thought about. You're part salesman, you're part teacher, and you're part of the fabric of what makes a community, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that's one of the things I learned about in sales. I'm not your salesperson. I'm not the person that's like high pressure anything, but I will educate. And I think that by leading with bringing that kind of value and making people feel comfortable in the decisions because they understand the process, that's where you create really loyal clients.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So, back onto your personal journey from New Orleans to Houston, what has been the most significant lesson that you've learned in your career and your personal life that sort of still drives you today?
Connections, the power of connections, I think. Um, it's we're not in this alone, right? And I think the more that you're able to build community with people along the way, the more resources you'll have to tap into when you really need them. I believe in this idea of relationship banking where, you make deposits and withdrawals, right? And so I try my best to just make as many deposits as I can because I know when I need to make those withdrawals at times, like there is something there.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy it. It's not as, I guess strategic as it sounds. Like I really love building relationships. And so, it's one thing to do it here in my local market, you know, and I talk to realtors, whether I'm coaching or training agents that are just coming into the business. One of the things I say is one of the things you need to do first is start networking with realtors because one, they're going to teach you things you don't know. You're going to develop relationships because you never know when you're just going to need help. You can learn from others, but it's an undervalued asset, I think, just your relationship with other agents. And so sometimes we see other agents as competition. It's like, hey, go to these realtor networking events. I'm like, why would I want to go find clients amongst realtors? And it's like, you're not trying to find clients amongst realtors. You're trying to build relationships. You never know where referrals can come from. And
Right.
what I love about EXP is that we have a nationwide network that's so easily accessible.
That's so true. That's a point that I've made till I'm blue in the face on this podcast, to be honest with you, is I
Yeah.
think it's what sets our resource groups apart is that when you talk about a global community, truly you're able to learn from others with no aspect of competition. These people aren't in your market. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
even the ones that, because that culture of everybody educating each other, that trickles all the way down in a really magical way to even where people in the same market are rooting for each other and teaching each other things. Because
Yeah.
that's the culture we've built at EXP, and I love that.
And I think I'm just going to shout out 1EXP because, it's like, where do you start? It's such a big place. And, when you find the resource groups, which I found Black EXP Network on Workplace Organically. And, my story with that, and I'm not sure if I shared it with you before, but just being a part of Workplace, being in that group, when I decided to go to one of the Build conferences, I went by myself. That was my first conference I went to by myself. I was like,
That's
what
a
am I
big
going
one to go to. Yeah.
to host? I was like, anybody going to Build? And I was like, I'm going. And then that's how I got connected into the community of seeing people and meeting people in person. And I swear I talk to people every day that I've maybe either never met before or met once or a handful of times. And those people are my family. And that's what I really love about this. and why I'm a big, advocate for One EXP to say get involved in these ways. And we have 14 resource groups,
Mhm.
and you can be a part of all of them if you want.
You could. Yeah, you can. Yeah. It depends on how much you want to learn. That's the only thing stopping you. You know what I mean? And obviously, the more you put in, the more you get out. But yeah, I love our networks. I think that they work so well
Yeah.
to help people really succeed, and that's the point, right?
Yeah, and it's the part of learning. And so when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially the inclusion part, it's really we work with all kinds of people. I don't turn people down because I don't look like them or I don't, sound like them. But I want to understand them. And sometimes being a part of, EXP Latino or being a part of Pride Network, like any of these organizations, I can get an understanding of like where my clients might be coming from with people that I already know. And so I could ask like, hey, I might have said something like, is it wrong if I say something this way? I want to be culturally sensitive in housing. That's incredibly important.
It's so important. Yeah, it would be it. We live in a sensitive time where you can lose a client really easily.
Yes.
And having, I mean, it's the people that we have for all of these resource groups, it's like picking a book off the shelf and learning the 101 of that community, what to say and what not to say. You can, I mean, anybody, I love it. That's why I'm a proud member of every single resource group and the founder of a few, because I always am finding new topics. And I'm like, more people need to be talking about this.
Yeah.
We're looking at another new resource group right now that I think is hitting a market that we haven't hit, right? So we're always looking, always evolving, and we love that.
Yeah.
So how would you say your work in real estate has allowed you to give back to the communities you serve?
I think just in that way through education. And now the mission has been hyper focused on Black EXP Network and giving back to not just the client community, but the agent community. And at Ben, we have a couple of different things that we do. Part of our strategic plan, it's always been a part of our culture, which started off very strong because I'm not original to Ben. I think we started in from a conversation in 2019 and started to become a little bit more formalized around 2020, 21. And I didn't even find Ben truly until maybe 2023 was when I got involved. But the culture was set very early on, and the intentions were set through the education that we provide um, has been huge. And so that's a big part that we offer to our community is education to our agents to make sure that they're equipped. We want to make sure that our members are not just here, they're producing agents and they know what they're doing. And, we have tons of resources that come from EXP, but we also kind of put a little bit of a twist on some of the things that we do because it's from leaders in the business, icon agents that look like us. There's something about representation that just makes you feel like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And so we want to make sure that we put our leaders on a platform through our monthly tribe trainings, which are every second Tuesday of the month in the evening. They're all Zoom format. Our Agent Accelerator Academy, which is a 6-week intensive cohort style program. We do it twice a year. And, again, it has a lot to do with like you just feel a part of a community. You feel like people care. And that's what's most important. And so now we're really working towards doing that at the local levels because one of the things that, is it's great that we have these formats, but sometimes you do want to just build and bond with people locally in your market. So we're working on building out local chapters.
Absolutely. I love that. And speaking of which, we're right in the beginning stages of Black History Month. Can you tell me about what BEN's got going on for Black History Month?
Let me pull up my list of things.
Good.
We especially at this time where I think a lot of people are just feeling confused, they're feeling hurt, they're feeling a whole lot of feelings, right? Uncertainty, I think, is the biggest. So one, celebrating our history through our marketing campaign. So we're on social media, Black EXP Network on Instagram. We have a Facebook page. And so really just making sure that we're sharing the history, the rich culture, spotlighting the people that are doing really amazing things. One EXP has a like I don't even know how to describe it, but our Black History Library, which anybody can check out, anybody who's an EXP agent, and I believe we can get guest passes
Yeah,
to
we
that.
can.
Okay. So if you're interested and you're seeing this, you can get a guest pass, but it's such a calming space to go into our virtual Black History Library. It's basically a museum that's got a ton of historical context. I mean, you can learn about all these amazing leaders, the history, learn about our members and the things that we do. You can see, the different events that we've hosted. And it's just a cool space. You can go in there at any time, just walk around, and it's open year round, but we definitely heavily promote it around this time of year. So that's one thing. Go check that out if you haven't. We have our tribe training as normal, and this week, actually, in a couple of days, I'm actually at the venue right now. I was checking it out today. We are having a Closing the Wealth Gap conference for agents. Anybody can come, really, and it's going to be February 5th, 12 to 4, here in Houston. And it's an opportunity for us to connect and learn about wealth building strategies, learning about those tools and resources we're always talking about, learning about how to connect our community to those resources, whether it be down payment assistance programs, understanding what affordable housing means, what it looks like, how we can all access it, as how we can help our clients, like teach those things to our clients as well. What else do we have going on this month? We are working on setting up a panel discussion. We talk about wealth and what that looks like, and EXP brings us an opportunity for other revenue streams other than just real estate production. So we're going to have a panel with some of our top leaders who excel in agent attraction and revenue stream, rev share. We're just celebrating. We're screaming out loud. We're doing the most.
I love it. I love it. That's the best way to do it. I love the take charge attitude you've taken over Black History Month, and it warms my heart to see this content coming directly from BEN. I love that so much. That Black History Library was one of Morgan and I's favorite things we've ever done for this company, is putting that together. It felt like such an expression of our love for the culture that we've had since we were children, and all the stories that we're able to tell. And it was a learning experience. I was learning more, and I just love it. And there's some tributes in there to some of my very favorite people, like Miss Nina Simone, who I could write you a book about Nina Simone. Or Maya Angelou, who I probably also could write a book about. I grew up immersed in Black culture, and there's just such value because these are the stories of America and what makes it great.
Yeah, it is. These are the stories, and you don't want to forget about them because they spark so much like inspiration and motivation. And you think about everything that they went through, our ancestors went through, and we're over here complaining about TikTok going away.
And TikTok's going away. Yeah, meanwhile, TikTok's going away. Yeah. And just walk through the Black History Library and get around to the Martin Luther King experience, and look around at the faces of the crowd and realize,
it's
like,
immersive. Like, when I first walked into it, it's not like just some pictures on the wall. It's literally you're walking around, and it's immersive. And it's
I like that a lot.
You can hear the speech,
So we're talking about Black History Month. What does that mean to you personally? What's important for you to celebrate and recognize and tell people about in Black History Month?
Man, so many things. I am just, I think especially right now, it's just a part of you draw on the inspiration from it, right? It's important. We're here for a reason. Being able to share stories, it's something that I really like, although I love Black History Month, I think it's something that should be celebrated every day because it should be more just part of our everyday culture because it is, right? Black Black culture has been so influential to all different aspects of American culture, and but I think this is just a month where we can truly celebrate it. Um, I think it's with anything else, it's just a time to focus on it, and so I really love because again, you don't think about the history every single day, so it's a really great time to reflect on where we've been. Um, and think about where we're going and lend a helping hand, whether it's just reaching out to somebody in the community that might need some help, and you don't have to give money, you can give time, you can share experiences. And so I think that's what it means to me. It's just this time that we rally around with pride. And so like I'm on Instagram, and February 1st I'm just seeing all these stories highlighting all these um, amazing like businesses. That's another thing that we want to do is just making sure you're supporting Black businesses, and some of that's just through recognition. So again, you might not be able to access the business, but you can share it out, you can spread
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's my mission every year. The very least I can do is support Black businesses, Black owned businesses, and I would encourage everyone else to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
you never know. Often when I'm supporting new Black owned businesses in February, I find a business that I want to support all year.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
it's the kind of product that I'm like, I can't live without this now, right?
and that just goes back to DI. It's like the intention of like seeking it out versus it just being something that falls in, because oftentimes, small businesses, be it Black businesses, maybe they just don't have the access, the resources, or the reach to get out there. But amazing products. I mean, I could rattle off several.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Really amazing business.
Yeah.
And I will. So stay tuned.
Good. I love that. And I also would add, like, for my non-Black folks, my fellows that are out there, when I was a kid, I don't know if it's the same way now. When I was a kid, deeper Black history beyond Martin and Rosa and Barack, the deeper stuff I had to learn at home. I could not, the schools didn't teach me that. And I think that we are going back to a place where Black history is scrubbed a little bit from grade school, So I would encourage you, if you are not African American, to use this opportunity to educate yourself on stuff that you were not taught in school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I'm going to shout
There's
out.
so much content out here about unsung heroes. That's the content you should be looking for. Right?
Yes, absolutely. There's a book that I'm reading right now. It's called Love and Whiskey by Fawn Weaver. She is a Black female billionaire, probably the only Black female billionaire in the space of liquor and spirits, I guess is the industry. But she tells a story of Uncle Nearest, which is a brand, but he was one of the first Black master distillers out of Tennessee. And just the story is so incredible, and I'm picking up so much. It's more than just the story, because he's actually the person behind Jack Daniel's brand.
Wow.
And it's actually, I love the way she brings it together, because it's actually a very loving story, because they were friends. And Jack Daniels actually did as much as he could to kind of, I mean, it was not a like taking something and making it his own. It's just that there was not a space for that to happen. You couldn't, during that time, he couldn't copyright or trademark anything, because he wasn't allowed to. It was illegal. It was just not even a thing. And so, it's, the story has gotten kind of lost and buried over time, because, things just aren't written down. It's just how much history has been lost. You almost have to go and find it. And so it's really important to go reach back out and listen to these stories, so that you can keep these stories alive. Because once people stop talking about it, it just stops existing.
That's absolutely right. Couldn't be more true. So let's see. What else we want to ask here? The real estate industry, here's a good one. The real estate industry has historically had barriers to home ownership and professional growth for many underrepresented groups and particularly Black folks, right? How can we break these barriers and create more access for everybody?
Education is a good start. For me, I think that's the part that I'm really focused on. Education and access to resources. And so it's really disheartening when you start to see some of these government resources being pulled back, because we just don't have it. We haven't gotten it from other places. And I've been fortunate enough to, live or have grown up with some understanding of this. But that we just making sure that you're reaching out to your neighbor, your fellow, you're educating on the power of building wealth in real estate, not just owning a home, but how owning a home can be used as a tool to build that long-term wealth, because it literally, it closes the wealth gap, it sets up generations ahead of us, but you have to also teach the process to your kids well, so they can teach their kids and really make sure they know it's not just important to own a home, but like what you do with it. But also too, I think we need more people of color in these spaces that are the ones that have the funds. How do we give back to our communities more so than just like once we have it, not just forget like where we came from, but make sure we're pouring back into those communities. There's lots of really great organizations out there, especially realtor organizations, NARAB, where you can find access to so many different. Did you know that there is a a grant program if you attended at HBCU, and you can have access to I don't want to like get it wrong, but I want to say like down payment assistance or closing cost assistance. There's create those programs if you can. Make sure we're providing those resources to our own community so we can help to continue to build each other up. Like there's, go learn the stories of Black Wall Street. We can. How do we keep the dollars circulating within our community? And it's not to say that other communities aren't important, but we have done that less than many other cultures that have come to this country. But also too, the way that we came here, just so many. It's just so disjointed that we're still trying to figure. If people don't think that systemic racism isn't a thing that has held Black people back for so long, and I tell people all the time, equity is not the same as equality. We're not starting at the same starting line.
No. Yeah, that the argument that systemic racism hasn't existed in the United States is paper thin, and it takes just a little bit of empathetic education to realize that is just not the case. I mean, that systemic racism has held Black folks down forever and ever and ever. That's when we teach, I teach a course called Connotation and Context and the Power of Words, and how some words or phrases have meanings that are rooted in bigotry. And one of those phrases that we teach about is the grandfather clause, or being grandfathered in. And the origins of that go back to when someone would be grandfathered in when after slavery, when they decided that Black folks would be able to vote. In the beginning, it was if you are a landowner and if you can pass a literacy test, and a bunch of ifs that remained barriers to Black people being able to effectively vote for a long time. But white folks didn't have to meet those same standards because they were grandfathered in, because they were free before the date of this. So, and that grandfather clause stood until last century, until the 1960s or 70s, right? Yeah. So, I mean, this is, when we talk about systemic racism, not only is it real, but it's not very far in the
Not
past.
very far in the past
Right.
at all.
Yeah. Like when I was a kid, I had an abundance of folks who lived through the hardest of it that I could learn from.
Mhm.
And when I was a kid, my nanny, who took care of me forever, woman by the name of May Collier, may her spirit rest in peace, who was like the mother that I always needed, right? Her grandmother was a slave.
Yeah. Yeah. My great-great-grandmother was a slave,
That
which is crazy.
one degree of separation. You know what I mean? This is not ancient history. This is real, right?
Yeah.
And America has never properly came to Black folks with the equity piece, right? And it's exactly what you said. We preach equality, but equality is not the same for everybody.
And also too, just the history of, like, you don't know where you came from. Like,
No, you don't. You don't.
all of that is like stripped from our history, and you really have to dig deep and try to find out and understand. I mean, clearly, we can talk about race, we could talk about color, because I mean, clearly, it would be, I'm undeniable. Like, okay, oh, you're Black, because I am very fair skinned, but then you talk about the historical context of what that is, especially I'm from Louisiana, and so it's very common to see
Mhm.
very fair skinned Black people.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go deep into it, but I mean, it has a lot to do with just what has happened to, um, us, like, ripping us of our history, our, like, understanding the context of where we came from. So if you are, the law was, if you're 1/32nd drops of Black blood in you, you were considered Black. And it's not, for me, it's not something that's easily tied back to. I mean, there were slaves having babies of slave owners, and that happened a ton in the South.
To
And
some of
so,
our presidents, even. Yeah.
yeah. And so then there's a whole other intersection of color, and and it comes into, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that it is. But I think it's important to know, and I think it's important to, like you said, really go look into your history and understanding, and draw on pride. And so I think that's one of the things about Black History Month that I really appreciate. It's a time to, like, just draw on the pride of the culture of what it is, who we are, why we're here, and keep moving us further. And it's a strength
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah. And a tip for those who are wanting to learn a little Black history and are struggling to grasp the weight of it, I would tell you something that I was very fortunate to have as a kid is May had a collection of records of speeches, and those speeches are still available, right? You can still find those online. So if you struggle to capture the weight of something like the I Have a Dream speech, please go listen to it come out of Martin's mouth, right? You know what I mean? That's something, that advice that I give when people are learning queer history too. Recordings of these people speaking the truth exist, and it's so much more impactful when you hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny, whenever we kind of get into this month, or you get around Martin Luther King Day, and it's like you see all of these Martin Luther King, so inspirational, and all these great sayings, but he was once the most hated man in America.
Yes, fully.
He was a disruptor. He said,
Yeah.
no,
He was
no,
classified as a terrorist,
yeah.
a man who lived a life of non-aggression, right? So, yeah.
Well, let's not forget that, as we, you kind of, you know what I mean? It's not gone away. I mean, there's still a fight to be had. And so,
Yeah.
who knows what this will look like when we look back on history and see, some of the things, because, what was it, around 2020, big Black Lives Matter movement, protesting happening in the streets. And it was like, oh, it's so it disrupts everything around us. Like, why are people complaining? That's what happens when your back is up against the wall. You come out swinging. And so,
I mean, we see now what's happening with DEI. most of the companies that have DEI programs, a big majority of them, did not prior to George Floyd. And they did it in a response because they had to do something, because the Black community was not going to take no for an answer. But here we are 5 years later, and it's an easily scratch off the list of corporate responsibilities.
Oh, we don't have to do it anymore because
we don't have to do it anymore. We did it. That's over. But it's not over. I'm telling you, it's not over. I tell people all the time that did not end Black civil rights. Just like the gay marriage win was not the end of LGBTQ plus rights, right? It is not. This journey is never over while a minority remains a minority, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just important to understand that, and I am all about it, and that's why it's important to have spaces to be able to be who we are and rejoice in it.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Well, Rachel, this has been such a lovely experience having you on here. I'm glad you're finally on the list of people who have done the CultureCast. We end every episode with the same question for everybody. If somebody who is brand new to EXP approached you today and said, Rachel, what do I do? What advice would you give them?
Join One EXP.
That's it.
Black EXP Network. It doesn't matter what color you are. We are made up of Black agents, our allies, but get involved, meet somebody, reach out, build those relationships. Spoke to it before. We are only as strong as, the people that are around us. And, you want to make sure that you are culturally, you keep the people around you who you want to be. Because, again, you're going to be the average of the people that are around you. So just make sure you're reaching out, connecting, and finding your tribe.
There it is. And on that note, we'll end this episode. This was brilliant. Couldn't cap it off better. What a lovely conversation. I hope everybody tunes in to watch this one. Stay tuned for more from One EXP and Black EXP Network coming for Black History Month. Go check out the Black History Library. If you're around Houston, check out this event that's coming up on Wednesday. And as always, subscribe, and follow One EXP on YouTube to stay up to date on the newest episodes of the CultureCast. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of One EXP CultureCast. If you would like to be featured on an upcoming episode or have someone in mind that you'd like us to invite, please contact us at dei@exprealty.net. If you have time, please be sure to scan the QR code on screen now to leave us a review